Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Got a few new faces. We haven't traditionally done introductions because we're here to learn, and we can introduce ourselves and schmooze and figure out who everyone is a little bit later on. Let us review the three cardinal principles of kosher astrology. I mean, obviously we use the term astrology in a very broad sense, and the sense that I'm certainly using it is sources in the writings of the Hasidic masters that touch upon and deal with things that we would normally call astrology. The three cardinal principles are, number one, the constellations are just stars. The stars line up in the sky, and they form a picture of some sort according to our point of view at our particular point in time and our cultural backgrounds. Right, so we look up in the sky and we see a Leo, we see a lion for the month of Av, which is the month that is just ending. Other peoples in other parts of the world with other backgrounds and other sets of mythology saw different things. And over the course of several centuries, since the Sumerians started doing this sort of stuff, the alignments have actually changed. The universe is expanding, various other astronomical issues that affect the positions and the way the stars line up. The stars don't mean anything, they just give us a picture of something that helps us understand things. Number two, not prescriptive. Anything that we learn here is not telling you, go out and invest in. It is telling you, of course, make a substantial donation to Yiboneh. Rabbi Poston is very happy to take any donation from you. But seriously, you can't look in, for example, the Shem Shmuel, the second Rabbi of Sachachow, and say we're coming up to the end of the month of Av, or I'm going out on a date with someone who was born in a certain month. Should I marry them or not? That's not going to be there. You're going to get an understanding, you're going to get help, you're going to get inspiration, but beyond that, I don't think there's anything else. Number three, Hebrew months only. The number one paradigm shift you have to make when you start doing this stuff is, I was not born in the month of July, I was born in the month of Tammuz. That is extremely important because that will frequently change what the constellation is, what the whole month is about, and what all of the things connected with the month are going to be. All right, so I thought originally I was a Leo. There is no way on the face of this earth that I am a Leo. I am 100% a Sartan. I'm a Cancer. I'm a little crab. And if you know me, I tend to get very crabby at times, but that's just a pun. The Sartan, the water sign, the things that crabs do, these are issues and points that resonate greatly and help me understand who I am and how I relate to and connect to other people. So that's what we take out of all of this. I want to make this whole thing simple. I know I've given out, I think, 5 different sets of handouts, and I do have a few extras printed. And if you have come a little bit late to all of this, the few that I really want you to have are, number one, the Chai Elul worksheet. I'm recycling. Things have been brought. Yeah, there's three of you who are here for the first time. So I think I may have one more of these. I should definitely have one more of these. And if I don't, I think you just have to look on. I could have sworn I had more. The 12 months of focus as taught by the Mei HaShiloach. This is where we started, and this is where we really are focusing. All of this entire course, since I started doing this a month or two ago, is focusing on the Torah as taught to us by Rabbi Mordechai Yosef of Ishbitz. His book is known as the Mei HaShiloach. It's available in English under the title Still Waters. I believe that is the title. It's a translation by Rabbi Bezalel Edwards. Oh, there is one more. I knew there was one more of these. I'm trying to be cheap with copies. You will excuse me on that, but okay. The other one that you have gives you the things that are connected with each month, and we're going to go through all of this. The basic point that I really, really wanted everyone to take away from this is that every single month of the year has a specific focus to it. We started off doing the 8 habits of highly spiritual people, then we did the 8 habits of getting through life and being a good person, as we learned from Noah and the Ark. And those are, of course, 8 habits that you're supposed to be doing all the time. Here we're looking at one thing to focus on every month. And a lot of them focus on lust and eating and consumption. And we're going to get to them one at a time. The Mei HaShiloach gives us very clearly what to do, what to focus on. And there's a great deal of background that is behind a relatively short piece of text. And if you're interested, I can give you the original handout that we did, but I just don't want to burden you with too many things. And the things that we're connecting on, if you look here, we're going to be on the 3rd page of where it says Chai Elul worksheet. This is something that we produced for the holiday of Chai Elul, which is of course very important in the Chabad world. But every single month has a verse from the Torah attached to it, and connected to that and found within it in terms of first letters or last letters of words is one of the permutations of God's name. So all of this stuff, plus a lot more, is behind what you have in the first column, 12 months of focus. All right, so the ones in bold letters that say, here's what you look at, here's what you keep in mind in this particular month. These come from these, right? So basically in terms of history and where it originates, it's this one which goes with all of the verses and this one here with just the list of things. But I really, really, really cannot emphasize enough that the point here is, yes, take the journey, go the whole way and look into all of these deep Kabbalistic concepts, but we're here to learn how to live. What am I supposed to be thinking about in this month? The new month of Elul is going to begin, right? And that's going to be month number 12. We're counting the months starting from Tishrei. That's a whole separate issue. Where do the months start from? But we're about to begin the last month of the year and then go into the first month of the year. And we have a lot of background. Those of you who have grown up among Jewish communities and have read a little bit about the way Jews do things on these times of year, these are incredibly sad and intense periods of time where we're going, right? Our Sephardic brethren are starting Slichot next week, the penitential prayers. Us Ashkenazim get off a little bit easier. We've got about 3 weeks to go before that starts. But this is a period where we try to be as good as we possibly can be. We try to be as focused and as serious as we can be, as religiously observant as we can be. And we forget the element of happiness, and we forget the element of joy, and we forget the really big overarching notion of God's permanent relationship with us. And that's what we get from all of this. Rabbi Aaron, please.
I wonder where you get this idea of sad. I understand serious, but the sad part I'm totally lacking on really understanding, because the way I see the starting during the month of Elul and the 10 days of Tshuva, when they do Slichot, it is extremely vibrant and full of joy.
Really?
And since we are taught that we are supposed to do every mitzvah with joy, even confession, which is what is happening here, and begging forgiveness should be done with joy. And I would expect from Hasidic thought, especially whether it's Breslov or not, this idea of the opposite of sad, serious, yes, but sad, no.
Interesting. I mean, my sort of takeaway until I came to Chassidut for Yamim Noraim was, I have been a bad person. The prayer books seem to be full of confessions of every permutation of every wrong thing that I could have possibly done.
That might be true. Why should one be sad when they're doing a mitzvah, such as confession?
It's an interesting
Right?
point.
Let's take Breslov, for example. I mean, if any of the Hasidic thought, they would be the one that says, don't be depressed.
Right.
Right? In your depression, be happy somehow. You explain it. I'm just throwing this out. But
Right.
The sadness I never really thought of, and I don't really see that. I see the seriousness. I don't see the sadness. Or maybe that's exactly the point. One should not be sad. That is the natural reaction, but that's wrong.
I can only tell you my experience, right, okay. And I come from, generally speaking, a place of depression.
Is that the right place to be?
No, that's where I get sent by God for some particular reason in previous incarnations. It's all about Gilgulim, folks. It's all about incarnation and reincarnation. But I think the overall feeling across the board with Jewish people is this is not the happiest time of the year. That it's a time of despair. And that it's a time of stock taking and resolving to be better and looking at your lists of failures.
Failure. Why is that depressing? I mean, that's what the natural state would be.
Yeah.
But the Torah is telling us not to be. I'll give you just an example. We have the first of Elul was when God said, "You have been forgiven. Now come up and receive to Moses the second set of tablets, which 40 days later we call Yom Kippur." That's the day we really received the Torah and we're celebrating it as angels. Right. I know, let's take an example. For a secular person, a non-religious person, Yom Kippur can be the most depressing day. But as a religious Jew, they would never, ever see Yom Kippur as a depressing day. They're not eating and not drinking because they're angels. Angels don't eat or drink. And they're forgiven. So the whole Elul is like beginning that whole process of white and cleansing.
I see it in theory, but I don't sense it in practice.
Maybe in practice. Practice Yom Kippur is called a Yom Tov.
Yeah, I mean you're quoting the right texts, but I think that pretty much every community that I've been in and every place I've been to for this sort of time of year, the notion that, for example, the relationship that God has with us is like a couple on their wedding night, right? This is the Mazal Betula. We'll get a little bit into this, right? A couple of sessions down the road, while we're into the month of Elul, that it's so much joy. It's absolutely perfect. This is like a total shock. I certainly never heard of this till 10 years ago.
So you just said a Betula. That's a version.
Yeah.
After having sinned with the golden calf, Moses prays for 40 days for our forgiveness, and God says on the first of Elul, "I have forgiven you. Come up and receive the tablets."
Mm-hmm.
Why would one be in a state of like a bride, getting ready? There's going to be nervousness. There's going to be serious. She's really worried about the dress fitting and the flower arrangements and all that stuff. But why would she not be happy? She's not going to be depressed. She's going to be seriously overwhelmed.
Okay.
The upcoming event.
I just don't see it in the way people as a whole approach this time of year. Maybe I don't hang out with the right people.
I think you spend too much time in yeshiva.
Yeshiva? Did I ever go to yeshiva? How dare you accuse me of such a thing? I learned in Yitzhak Elchanan for 4 years. That's about it.
Just to bring you back to the focus.
Yeah.
Since you the one that used the word depression, and I said serious. Do the Hasidic masters discuss this depression and how to overcome it?
Oh yeah, that's where we're going here. That's where we're going here, and that's why I've numbered them from Tishrei through Elul, and we're going to start with Chodesh Elul, which starts on Friday night, and we're just a couple of days from now. And it's the whole point of you've been through this entire year, and God still loves you. God still is going to look after you. You can't lose. The line that we've said quite a few times is, you're set up for success. And even when you fail, it's still fine. Right? The bits that I really want to focus on is the lines called, where it says focus MHS, which stands for Mea Shiloach. And for the month of Elul, God supports you. And if you have a little difficulty with the Hebrew, I definitely have these verses transliterated, because these are worth taking a look at, because the verses that come to us through the permutations of God's name, which is a difficult and a complicated thing to deal with, do lead us into what the month is about and what the focus is. The Meshilach himself has next to nothing in terms of origins of how he gets to tell you all of this, but there's a huge amount of background. And if you go into the next generations of the Ishbitz Radzin family, you get to see that. And if you go into the Zohar, you get to see it even more. So there's a lot of things here, but really focus on what am I supposed to be working on in this particular month. And when the month changes in 30 days from now, when Rosh Hashanah comes along, what am I supposed to be focusing on? And I think this is incredibly valuable, and it's good for me, and I try to do it. I don't always get there, but I do definitely try to do it. Okay? So we're looking at, on the sheet which has multiple pages, page number 3, the very last one. And I counted up, there's about a dozen things that are connected with each of the months. Right? And the Sefer Yetzirah, the Book of Formation, lists 5 things that connects with the month. A letter of the Hebrew alphabet, something to do with the body, sometimes it's a sense, a constellation, the name of the month, and a part of the human body. The Kabbalists add the name of God and a verse in the Bible that connects with that. And they also add a tribe of the people of Israel. The Mea Shiloach, which is where we start and where we're really trying to keep ourselves and our focus, adds also the name of the prince of the tribe, a precious stone, and our major focus point here, which is what to do each month, what to be focusing on. Okay? So, month number 12, which is Elul, connects to verse number 25 in chapter 6 of Devarim, the book of Deuteronomy, and it tells you that God supports you. God has always got your back, right? And the verse is, and it will be for our merit that we keep to observe all the commandments before God as he has commanded us. I think that the connection is simply in the Hebrew words, tzedakah tihiyeh lanu. We tend to look at tzedakah as charity, as something that you get for nothing, right? That you get whether you deserve it or not. A gift. Any chance you can put the air conditioning on?
Yeah.
Because I'm totally losing my ability to even think here. Keep it a little bit below 0 and we're fine.
27, it's not even
God. Right? The other pieces here on the page which tell us what the constellation is, what the tribe is, what the action and what the thing of the month is. These are issues that we will deal with down the line. But going back to the original Mea Shiloach, and if you recall what we looked at the very, very first time we got into all of this, was a whole list of words in the Talmud on Rosh Hashanah where the rabbis had difficulty with some words that they had in different contexts, mostly biblical verses. And that's the right-hand side of the 12-month focus part, which I don't want you to ignore, but I want you to realize this is here with an additional set of meaning and of nuance in it. Right? The verses and the words were 12 in number. So the Mea Shiloach is saying there are 12 things here, got to be connected with the months of the year. Right? All 12s fit together. So the verse that they connected it with is in Psalm number 55, Hashlech el Hashem Yehovacha. God says, cast upon God your burden. That refers to the month of Elul, because if you will say, Eich efshar l'hitbarer, how is it possible to clarify myself, to purify myself in all of these things? Right? It's month number 12. And I've tried to do absolutely everything on the list. Right? We're doing this from the end. For some reason or other, I do things backwards. It proves that I'm a sartan. Right? A crab walks at least sideways. There's no accidents here, right? So Psalm 55 has this particular verse, Yahav is burden. And if you say, I've gone through the past 11 months, I've done each of these things, and Eich efshar, how is it going to be possible for me to do this? Thus the verse says, Timsor et atzmecha l'Hashem yitbarach v'hu yivarer otcha. Pass yourself, give yourself over to God, and He is going to clarify and purify you completely. Right? Simple, straightforward. You think you cannot do it. You've tried. You've done 11 different things. Some of them related to each other, some of them not. And it hasn't worked. You're not a better person. You know that you failed in every single thing you've tried. Give it over to God. God has still got your back. And I think the verse connects by saying God supports you. U'tzedakah tihiyeh lanu. God is going to give you the merit. God's going to give you the credit just for trying. Right? Makes a certain amount of sense so far? Then you switch over to the very beginning, and we go to the month of Tishrei. We will, if you stick with us, and if we all stick with this, go into these two particular months in a great deal more detail. Right? The first month of the year is the month where we have all of these holidays, where we have Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, all of these things. And the verse is, and the focus is, the door is always open. How does he actually say this in the text itself? And referring Tishrei to the trumpet of the Jubilee year, right? The Yovel, freedom. Refers to the month of Tishrei because in this month, a person has to understand that God can take Israel, the Jew, the individual Jew, or all of us, to complete freedom and show us ki lo hayu mishubadim me'olam, that we were never enslaved. The nations of the earth never enslaved us. V'lo mashal aleihem me'olam rak hu levado. And anything that is holding us down is really only directly from God Himself. Right? Tishrei is the month of Rosh Hashanah. It's a month of freedom. Right? It sounds like Pesach to me. But here's where we're getting it. Right? The verse that connects with this is Bereshit chapter 12, verse 15. Vayiru otah sarei Pharaoh. Talking about Sarah. Pharaoh's princes saw her. They praised her to Pharaoh, and she was taken to the house of Pharaoh. Right? There's a couple of ways we can reconcile this or make this fit with the basic notion that you thought you were in prison, but the door was actually open all the time, and you could have just walked out. One of them is that God is always in control. That the fact that Sarah was taken to the house of Pharaoh and placed in a very difficult situation under armed guard and was at least about to be forced to do something with the Pharaoh. Didn't happen. All that happened was she was terrified, unhappy, but had to realize from the beginning, putting it back onto our sort of look at this, that there was no danger at all. It's one of the classic lines from the Mea Shiloach where he talks about what is the Messianic era going to be like? How is it going to magically appear? What's the difference? How quickly is it going to turn over from the way things are to the way things will be? And he talks about the example of Joseph and the brothers. Right? You're familiar with the story. Joseph is the senior officer and whatever minister in Egypt, and he's playing with his brothers. The brothers who sold him into slavery. The standard reading is he's trying to test them to see if they're sorry for what they did. And it comes to the point where the brothers say, "We give up. Take us as slaves. What we did to Joseph has brought all this upon us." And then Joseph says to them, "I'm Joseph, your brother." And Yosef Achichem says 3 simple words, and everything is over. It's all turned around. And that is how Reb Mordechai Yosef says, this is how the Messianic era is going to come around. And this is how it is with us ordinary folks as well. That which oppresses us, that which holds us down, that which seems to be playing with our lives arbitrarily, really will reveal itself to have been our own brother, right? And one of the things, again, that we learn from all of this astrology sort of stuff is that God wants the relationship with us to be like that of a twin, right? Which month of the year is the Torah given in? Chodesh Sivan, the month of Sivan, and the Mazal, the constellation, is Tu'umim. This is a big Torah in the Bnei Yissaschar, which I think is, one of the most powerful ones that there is. And I say that a lot because there are a lot of them. God wants a sort of a relationship that we know twins have with each other, right? I mean, my son-in-law's twin brothers, and what I know is they do have a level of communication and a level of connection that is above just ordinary brothers and sisters. And that's the kind of connection that God is looking for from us. Right? There are another couple of issues that come up with this particular verse, right? Because when you think of it, it's really not a terribly inspirational line. What do you have in terms of verses in the Torah that will get you turned on to the spirit of the month of Tishrei? This is not one that comes to mind, right? One of the opinions on this is that Sarah the matriarch was noticed by the servants of Pharaoh. What does that mean? At this particular time, there is a deep connection between the Jewish people and the nations of the earth. I don't fully agree with this, but it's out there, because during the festival of Sukkot, we make sacrifices on behalf of the nations. The nations of the world like us more, and we get along with them better at this time of year. Take it or leave it, right? I think also we have a tendency during this time of year, and that maybe goes back to what we were talking about earlier, that Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, we tend to be very much wrapped up in ourselves. That the focus of Jewish people at that particular time of year is us. And this is simply me thinking about what the verse might mean and what it means to me. I think ultimately that is the basic point that I want to put out here. The focus, and then you have a verse, you have a pasuk in the Torah that has the potential to speak to you. And if it says something to you, wonderful. If it says something other than what I say, that's okay too, right? I think that during this whole period of the month of Tishrei, we're very, very inward focused. We're looking at ourselves as individuals, we're reassessing ourselves as a community, and then we have this whole Sukkot holiday, which is total, absolute, amazing pleasure, especially here in Yerushalayim, right? It's a good idea to take a minute or two and say, there are people in this world other than Jews, and we have a certain amount of responsibility to them. One of the incredibly powerful things, I'm just going back to, I think it was the Syracuse, New York years. So this is quite a few years ago. We invited a number of people from a certain church to come visit us on Sukkot. And they did, together with the pastor, some of the children, and I forget even what the motivation for it was. It was some program that was going on in the whole city with one of the interfaith organizations. And these people came into the sukkah, Bible-believing Christian men and women, and they were blown away by it. It resonated so deeply with them, and it gave them an enormous appreciation of what we have done with the commandment, thou shalt sit in booths for 7 days, etc., etc., right? And how it's helped us and what it means to us and how much joy there is in it. And they have it in the Bible there as something that, well, the ancient Israelites did that. I think there is an opportunity for us that we don't do and we don't notice. And over the years, I've gone on and off and waxed hot and cold about bothering with the interfaith community, and because some of these things are very rewarding and some of these things are a total waste of time, and some of the things are actually even quite harmful to get too involved with. But I think it is a lesson that comes to me from the month of Tishrei. Open the door a little bit. We did, again going back to the Syracuse years, we did a beginner service for Rosh Hashanah and for Yom Kippur, right? How do you fit in an extra service in a day? That's a hard one. It means you're in the shul and you're doing stuff all day. And we literally got on the front page of the local newspaper. And we had a good friendly relationship with the media then. And newspapers actually meant something back 20-something years ago. Show the world that there is something called Judaism that has something to give to you. And that's not usually a thing that takes an enormous effort. Nonetheless, my point always with these particular verses is not the technicalities, not the analysis, not the Zohar and the commentaries behind it, but that these are verses that are picked and selected not by natural means, but from up there. And they're meant to jump out and they're meant to give you something that spurs you to do something. Okay? So that's Tishrei. You get off the hook. The door is open. Get out of jail free card, right? I spent far too much time playing Monopoly, both as a child and as an adult. Never got into other sorts of games, but Monopoly I certainly liked. How does the door of your prison cell open? Right? We find ourselves imprisoned by many different types of things. How do you get out of jail? Does God open the door for you from the outside? Do you have to do something magical? No, you just have to see that it was never closed at all. It was never locked. You were never imprisoned. You always have that ability. And when you look around you on Yom Kippur, what are people thinking? Again, back to our original discussion. I still will not give in to you on this. And since I'm older and I must be much wiser, right? No, I think I've just been around congregations more, right? And I think I don't see people coming into Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur happy. Coming into Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur happy. I've gone to the wrong types of shuls, I guess, huh?
You don't go to the wrong shul.
it's a revelation. For me, it was a huge revelation to learn all of this stuff. All right, so let's get through the rest of these months, because I want to really go back and then look at Elul and then Tishrei from a couple of texts that I have printed and I have translated for you. All right, month of Heshbon, second month of the year. It's on page 1 of the worksheet thing, and it's really a tough one because this goes over 2 verses. Right, so what's the focus point of the month of Heshbon? Lust. Sorry, folks, we have to got to talk about all of this stuff. B'zeh hachodesh, in this month, a person must levarer et atzmo mita'ava. We have to work on our libidos, how we look at other people. What are we looking at when we see another person? Are we seeing an object that is desirable, or are we seeing them mind to mind, right? And then we're going to see the lust and the desires come up several times, and 3 or 4 different times. They all seem to connect. And we can't be very politically correct about this, because this is the way human beings are, right? This is the way we're made. And this is the big, big struggle of life, right? I'm not going to go into all of the details, but you get the point. And right across all the great Hasidic masters, we're dealing with keeping our sexual urges under control, keeping our mind away from what we're not supposed to be thinking of, and using our sexual energy the right way, the right time, the right place. Right? Because remember, in this particular point of view, it comes from up here. The number 1 sexual organ is your mind. And if you keep your mind pure and you keep your mind focused, then you open up the door to absolutely everything good in the entire world. Right? This is when we get it. If you want to do this course, I was doing some organizing and tidying. We do have a really nice course ready to go from Rabbi Chanukah, from one of the students of the Mea Shilach, about focusing your dreams and finding the prophetic messages that God is sending you in your dreams. In a nutshell, clean your mind up while you're awake. Then you have less nonsense coming up in your dreams, and you may actually hear God talking to you. Okay? But we can do that at length and with comparison to what we read from other sources on these things another time. Right? The month of Heshvan is not a terribly busy month of the year, but it is a month that we are told here by the Mea Shilach to focus on getting our libidos under control. Right? How do you connect that to this particular verse? And then you have to ask the question of why are there 2 verses? Here and in one other case, the permutation of God's name is stretched over 2 verses. And it's the last word of the first verse and the 1, 2, 3, first 3 words of the second verse. So, if you want to put that together, it is the words for honey, this day, Hashem, your God. Which doesn't make an enormous amount of sense. Unless you want to say that real sweetness is from Hashem. The real sweetness and the real connection and the real feeling and emotion that we can only understand in our world in terms of physical intimacy, that is intimacy with God. That's the real sweetness. That's Devash, right? They didn't have sugar like we had in the time of the Bible. There's more than one way of dealing with the division here, and I'm looking at someone else here. Devash hainu davar tahor shemekoro midavar tameh. What is honey? Honey is something that is pure and kosher and good that comes out of a bee, which would normally be considered a very impure and non-kosher animal. Thus, after the month of Tishrei, where we have been very good, and we have prayed and we have repented, God takes our sins, our tumah, the bee, and produces honey from it. Thus, it is separated into two verses. The past is how it was, and the future is how it's going to be. Take it or leave it. I can't say that that makes a great deal of sense to me, but I'll tell you its source, Harav Uri Shreki. I don't know who he is at all, right? But when you Google the words 12 permutations of God's name in 12 months, this is one of the very few articles that comes up. And Rav Shreki has something to say here that I don't necessarily agree with, but it's worth noting. The question of the division of the Bible into verses is a sort of interesting one. The way that we have it all is chapters and verses. That's really a Christian thing. It comes from about the 12th century. And I believe the first document, the first manuscript, is from Scotland, I believe, and divides the Bible up into what we know today as chapters and verses. Jews adopted them because of disputations. We were forced to dispute and to argue about the Bible and defend the Bible and defend Judaism, and it just gave us a relative, the same frame of reference. Nonetheless, you go back to the Ta'amim, you go back to the musical notation, and that divides the verses up, and that obviously predates this whole early Middle Ages thing altogether, right? The devash word here, udevash and honey, end of verse, today Hashem your God. Maybe there's a certain amount of context here. We're again in Devarim, we're in the book of Deuteronomy, where the verse says, to God, look down from your holy dwelling, bless your people Israel, the land which you have given us. You swore to our forefathers a land flowing with milk and honey. This day Hashem your God is commanding you to fulfill these statutes, ordinances. You will observe them and fulfill them with all your heart and all your soul. That's about as much as I can pull out of this. And again, to go back to my original point, the reason I'm putting these things out here is because maybe you were born in the month of Heshbon, and this particular verse should potentially be saying something to you. Okay? Number 3, Kislev. The thing to focus on, according to the Mea Shiloach, is not lust for, but lust for money, a specific type of thing. Chodesh Kislev, ki bazeh chodesh tzarich la'adam, a person must levarer et atzmo b'chemdat mamon. How much do you value things in terms of money? And again, it goes back to the list of words that he is pushing on to. The list of things to do for each month. Right? So the verse is, the Canaanites, the inhabitants of the land, saw the morning at the threshing floor. What is the actual background here? It's Bereshit, the book of Genesis, chapter 50. And Jacob is being brought back to Israel to be buried. And the Canaanites see a major mourning place at a threshing floor, whatever this particular place was. And they said, this is a great and intense mourning for the Egyptians. Therefore, they called it the place of mourning of Egypt, which is on the other side of the Jordan. What are we supposed to take away from that? That again, I'm struggling a little bit with, right? You don't take anything with you when you die, potentially. Again, going back to Rav Shrekki and his list, I don't see him saying anything particularly useful here. The month of Kislev is the month of Chanukah, where we fought the Greeks. And the Greeks had taken over Israel, and we were rebelling against them.
This verse is connected to Kislev. Just keep in mind, it was a 70-day mourning period, as the verse says.
Right.
If you count 70 days from Sukkot, I mean, you might be first of all, but there's a count back 70 days from either the 25th Kislev, yeah. It could be the last day. It could be the last day of Hanukkah, which is really connected. You count back, I think you come out to Shmini Atzeres, or the first day of Hanukkah, Sukkot. There's all connection there. On the deep level. But anyway.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the big things that we were talking about a while back is that there's really only one holiday in the Jewish year, and there's one paradigm. It just repeats and repeats. Intense mourning. I don't see an enormous amount else. It doesn't jump out and tell me anything about the month of Kislev. I mean, the connection to Chanukah, right? Chanukah was about the Greeks trying to destroy our faith, right?
I think I remember a little bit of connection had to do with the 70 Korbanot.
Right.
Something in Sukkot, again, our ability to bring the world to a higher place as priests in the temple, but ultimately 70 days later, some connection also to the kingdoms that are trying to overtake us, and we do the opposite. But anyway, there's some connection. It's a very deep connection.
Yeah, the connection. The connections are there, and I'm putting these out to say, see what you can take from it, right? I can tell you some of them because some of them make sense to me, but some of them don't entirely, right? Moving on to the month of Tevet, right? Month number 4, right? The month of Tevet, כי בזה החודש צריך אדם לברר את עצמו במידת הכעס, anger. We have to deal with our anger. We have to not allow ourselves to be buried underneath our anger. The verse is from Psalm 34. Gadlu Lashem iti unroma mashmo yachdav. Declare the greatness of God with me, and let us exalt His name together. Right? Here, the point of focus from the Mea Shiloach and from the Sefer Yetzirah, from the book of Formation, both overlap. We're dealing with anger here, and the general sort of thought is, if we realize and express that God is in charge, what is there to be angry about?
Sorry, just hit me. Just light bulb went off.
Yeah.
You know the Chassidut story that when's the last day for your sins to be forgiven? We went from Rosh Hashanah to Yom Kippur, and
Right.
then after Yom Kippur you have to Hoshana Rabbah,
Right.
and maybe Shmini Atzeres. But the Chassidim say until Hanukkah.
Right.
So Hanukkah is 70 days after Yom Kippur.
It's another level of last chance.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. We're good. We're good with this one.
That they say, when Rosh Hashanah is when it's written, when Yom Kippur is when it's sealed, on Hoshana Rabbah is when it's sent, Hanukkah is went to red by the light.
Oh, cool. I like that. I definitely like that. I mean, the other sort of reason, the other sort of thought that comes up with when are you judged? Again, going back to Mea Shiloach. And this is one of the pieces that we didn't do at all, that is in the background of all of this, from the very first time we actually brought all this stuff out, is that what are you judged for on Yom Kippur and on Rosh Hashanah? On Rosh Hashanah, you're judged which day you're going to be judged on, right? which is sort of funny, but it's not the same for everyone. There's a new year for you in your life. There's a new year for you in your business and your learning, whatever it happens to be. That isn't necessarily the first of Tishrei, or the first day of the year. And that's the judgment that you get when it's going to be your new year, right? Which is another nuance here, right? The month of Tevet is the month that we try and deal with our anger, right? None of us ever get angry, right? We're perfectly good people. Month number 5 is Shvat, and that is a month where we are expected to be dealing with our eating, get our eating under control. And again, you have one here that fits nicely with the Sefer Yetzirah, which talks about taste. And going back to our original source, again, the Mea Shiloach, that this month of Shvat is Tzarich Adam Levarer et Atzmo B'ta'avat Achila, with your desires for eating. And he talks about a Gemara and about a particular word that a bride eats in a very delicate and dainty manner, right? I have never watched brides eating at weddings, right? Quite a few weddings I've gone to have had separate seating, so you never even get to see that other side. But I'm guessing a bride would be incredibly careful, right? More than the average person when eating.
Well, they generally eat the youth room.
Yes, only the new hubby sees that, right? And then they're dancing the night away, right? The basic point is this is a month that is Tu B'Shvat is in it, right? 15. We've got things growing. Those of you who eat fruit and veggies will think of this as a particularly good month. I stay away from anything that grows in terms of eating. That's just my personal issues. And spring is here. You want to eat more. You're happy, right? If you suffer from allergies, it's the worst time of the year, right? But that's a totally different story altogether. In antiquity, I don't think they had allergies. How does that connect with the verse? Again, it's one that's a little bit hard to do. He shall not inspect a tithe animal for a good or a bad one, nor shall he offer a substitute for it. We're in the book of Vayikra, right? And what we're talking about is animals that are designated for sacrifices, an animal that has been tithed, and you cannot substitute a different animal for the one you have already designated, right? V'im hamer yimirenu, and if you do, in fact, make this switch, then the one you switched and the one you switched out, both of them become holy and cannot be redeemed. Right? B'chodesh Shvat mitracheshet timura ba'olam. Switching things around is the feeling of the month. I'm taking my random article from the internet here, right? Not all of this is from clear, documented, wonderful sources. But the verse here is talking about switching things around. Eating. One of the problems that we do have is some of the editions of the various books that we're looking at have switched these verses around. I'm taking everything straight from the standard edition. The text of the Sefer Yetzirah is that which is used by Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan in his translation, and the text is that from the Gra, from the Gaon of Vilna. So we got to stick with one, but we can go back and do this all over again with some of these things done in a slightly different order. The month of Shvat is the month where we have to deal with our issue of eating and our desires for more and more food, right? The month of Adar is a very, very obvious one, right? That we are dealing with the problem of excess frivolity, right? Adar is the month of Purim, right? B'zeh Chodesh, in this particular month, a person must purify himself mileitzanut, from clowning around, right? V'kalut rosh, and lightheadedness, right? Not lightheadedness in terms of I have had too much to drink and my head is light, but taking things too lightly, which is a tendency that we do. This is very, very obvious in the time of the month, right? And one of the basic thoughts that we do keep going back to is that a particular holiday like Purim, for example, can only occur in the month of Adar, where the focus is laughter. What is laughter? And basically, the Hasidic masters I'm looking at in my mind, the Shem Yishmuel here, the second Rebbe of Sachachov, is that you've got to distinguish between the laughter of the fool and real laughter. Right? There's funny that you watch a stupid comedy on TV and you laugh it and there's not a single thought behind it. Right? And that can be good, and that has its place. There are days when we need to watch this sort of TV show. If you watch TV, of course. We assume none of us waste our time on these things. Watch only sci-fi shows. Watch Star Trek, watch Doctor Who, because you will then get a great understanding of all of this stuff. You learn that time is not linear, a lot of good things too. They tend to be the cleanest and most kosher shows on TV. There's the laughter of the fool and there's the laughter of the wise. There's the smile, there's the real laughter you have when you've achieved something, when you've learned something, when you've connected with someone, when you're sharing real simcha, right? There's more than one level of laughter. And this is the month that is obviously set aside for purifying and working on our level of laughter and what we laugh at. Because most of us, myself included, we do have a tendency to look at people and and laugh at them. He's wearing that shirt with those pants, right? For us guys, it's not such an issue, right? But that dress is from last year. How can that possibly be? That's the sort of thing that we don't laugh at, you know. And that's one of the things that, again, going back to shuls and communities, and you don't have the latest fashion. You don't belong here. You're just a subject of ridicule for us, right? Month number 7, Nisan. Right, what are we supposed to focus in on the month of Nisan? Other people's property. Straight out of the Mehashiloch, Tzarich Adam litbarer bekinyan she'eino shalo. Kinyan is to purchase or to buy property of something or other that doesn't belong to you. What have you borrowed from somebody and not returned? What have you bought? What have you acquired that you don't have a right to? None of us go into a bank with a gun and steal things, right? We don't shoplift or anything like that. But there are things that we do take from other people and that we don't have a right to. Some of them literal, some of them not so. Right? Month number 8, I have euphemistically said seed, zera, which again, politically incorrect and not for the genteel of mind and thought here. Seed, she'az tzarich ha'adam litbarer b'mikre laila, that a person should be careful not to accidentally emit seed in the middle of the night, other than how and where it's supposed to be done, right? Thought. The focus is, remember, your sexual activity comes from up here. It needs to be controlled and focused so you can have a real, valuable, useful, productive life. And one way of doing this, and one sure way of assuring this, is keeping your sexual organs firmly under control. Right? Not giving yourself the ability to drift off into fantasy and wherever that will lead. Okay? Month number 8. We're up to 8 or up to 9? Number 9. Sivan, the month of Sivan. Again, very obvious. Sivan is the month of the giving of the Torah. I have my numbers written here correctly. Zirizut ledivrei Torah. Diligence. The month when the Torah is given is a month when you should be incredibly active and incredibly focused on Torah. That makes very, very obvious sense to me, right? The verse sort of connects, I think. I gotta flip the page here, and the verse does sort of connect. It's Exodus chapter 19, describing the Mishkan. You shall make 40 silver sockets under 20 planks, 2 sockets, a whole list of things. And it's the other example of where the God's name comes spelled out at the end of one verse and the beginning of another. What connects everything? Take note of all the sockets, all the pegs, all the planks, all the different details, and bring them all together. Work at it. This is the time we're given the Torah. This is the time that it is particularly good and easy to start learning Torah with much greater detail. Yeah. Right? Number 10, Tammuz. All right, previous month, my birthday. The verse is from the book of Esther. Join with and search for Torah. Right? We got two months in a row here where in Sivan we have to have diligence and detail and focus for learning Torah. But month number 10, Tammuz, Tzarich Adam lechaber atzmo ledivrei Torah. You've got to connect yourself, join with Torah, and search after them. Right? And the verse comes from the book of Esther, where Haman, the major bad guy, says, all this stuff that I have, all this power that I've gained, all this wealth that the king has given me, is worth absolutely nothing to me when I see Mordechai the Jew sitting in the king's gate. It's not worth it to me. Making a calculation based just on dollars and cents, or shekels and agurot. The calculation of things, what's really valuable, what's really important is Torah, because Torah is what it's all about. This one spoke to me a lot, and it was my entry into the whole study of this thing. I've said this before. One of the things that I've always said all my life, and that I've had an enormous amount of difficulty pushing out, is the notion that it's not worth it, that there is an accounting to be made, and the way I look at it, the balance sheet, the accounting doesn't come out right, and it costs me too much to do this, or whatever it happens to be. And that comes from a very dark place. This is Haman. This is the evil character. When we're being pushed to look at things in these sort of terms, that's not a good voice. That's the bad angel whispering in our ear, right? Pinocchio, as opposed to the good angel. Right, and back to the last month, which is number 11, which is what we're coming to an end here with, a general list of all desires that we need to work on. We've worked on our sexual lust, we've worked on our lust for money, we've worked on our lust for food, we've worked on our desires to keep everyone else's property. Now we have this sort of omnibus lust, and again it comes from the connection with that whole list of words that we started out with a few weeks back. In the month of Av, you have to purify yourself mikol minei chamudot, from all possible lusts and desires. And that's what we need to look at. What is he getting at here? Again, there is a background to it. The month of Av is where the nations of the world overpowered the Jewish nation, right? 9th of Av, destruction of the temple, the end of the Jewish Commonwealth. And each of these nations represents one particular level of desire. All of them came, all of them took over. And what we are looking at here in this particular month is the push in the opposite direction. There's always a double-headed thing here. And what I would like to get into the next time when we get down to this is that every month has something to do with it. That it is not necessarily the focus of the Mea Shiloach that is the most important one, but that's where we started from. There is the focus that we get from the Sefer Yetzirah in its various versions, and these are generally explained in terms of the holidays or the fasts of the particular year, or rather the particular month. We're looking at, in the month of Av, the need to push back against the whole list of things that brought us to that particular time of year. Okay, that's a very quick overview of what all of this is about. We do have a list of 11 things that we are supposed to be focusing on in each of the months, and that are intimately connected with the underlying programming of the month. So the way that I tend to look at it, and this is simply me explaining it, is that once God made time, once God made a thing called a month, there is something in that month that we can either let control us, which is not the way we're supposed to go, or we can say, here is a piece, here is some power. Here is something that I can use to make my life better, to make the world a better place. Right? I can take an electric current and I can hurt somebody or kill somebody with it. Or I can attach it to a light, or I can attach it to an air conditioner, and I can do something pretty darn useful with it. That is the challenge of all of the months. So we're going to start next time with, I think, the month of Elul, and then we'll go into the month of Tishrei. We'll take a look at a couple of the Hasidic masters in terms of what they're saying and what they're telling us to be doing and what the opportunities are. So the things and the focus points are going to be shifting, which is one of the really, really important things to remember here. That here we've got a month, it's the month of Av, we're going into the month of Elul, something is going to be changing. What's the focus? But you can see quite clearly that there are several different ways of looking at it. It is never going to be as simple as, here's the month, do this. you've got to look at these things, you've got to look at what the sets of choices are and say, here's what I find resonating with me, with my particular situation. And a lot of the time I hope you'll find, as I do, that these really are magical books and that these are absolutely amazing, wonderful ways of improving your life and really understanding what Torah is all about. Okay? All right.
Yiboneh Archives.